My wife Sophia's first love was dying, and when she heard the news, she was lying under me, gasping and moaning. Sophia pushed me away forcefully, put on her clothes quickly, and explained anxiously, "I'm going to go see David. We'll continue next time." After that, she slammed the door and left. Looking at Sophia's back, I calmly stood up and put on my clothes. It was not impossible to get divorced the day after the wedding. I had just opened my second pack of cigarettes when I got a call from Sophia. When the call was connected, a cheerful male voice came out. "Brother, I'm sorry for ruining your wedding night because of our game." So is Sophia. She's already someone else's wife, but she's still so impulsive. "I've already told her off for you. She won't do it again next time." Then, Sophia's nonchalant voice came from the other end of the phone. "It's just the wedding night. If it's gone, it's gone. He asked me to hold the wedding. How dare he have any objections to missing the wedding night? If he has any objections, then divorce him. You didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing to him? Whatever game you guys are playing, I want to play too. Sophia, I'm not your groom. You can't be so willful anymore." Then the man sighed helplessly. "Brother, I will give her a good scolding. You should get some rest early." Suddenly, I felt sick from smoking the cigarette in my hand, and I hung up the phone without saying a word. I looked up at the room full of wedding characters, all of which were mocking me. A man abandoned by his wife on his wedding night. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. My wedding with Sophia was indeed what I begged for, just as she said. After 3 months of begging, she finally agreed, but she didn't ask for tea or a bride reception, just a simple meal. Although it was very different from my ideal wedding, I didn't care. For me, it was enough for her to be the bride. But on our wedding night, Sophia's cell phone rang with her first love, David. Sophia put her hand on me and asked me to wait, and I stopped. But when Sophia heard that David was dying, her face turned pale. It took less than 10 minutes from hanging up the phone to slamming the door and leaving. The moment the living room door was closed, the door in my heart that held her was opened. The message on my phone brought me back from my thoughts. Sophia sent me a message saying, "I'm going to watch the sunrise with them. I want seafood porridge when I get back tomorrow. No green onions. David doesn't like it." I stared at the message in a daze. How cheap was I in Sophia's mind that I would cook seafood porridge for her first love on the second day of her wedding? I closed my eyes, suppressed my resentment, and typed a sentence on the keyboard, responding, "When you come back after watching the sunrise, we will get divorced." After sending the message successfully, I got up and took down all the decorations in the house. Seeing the red all over the floor, I felt a little more comfortable. When Sophia came back the next day, I was eating beef noodles with great relish. I looked up at her when I heard the door open. Sure enough, Sophia was wearing David's shirt, with her white thighs showing underneath. Whenever Sophia came back from an all-nighter with her group of friends, she would be wearing David's clothes. I argued with her and told her that I cared about their relationship having no boundaries. Sophia just said nonchalantly, "He and I are in the past, and I can't help it if you care." Sophia even advised me to be more open-minded, saying that no matter what she did, she was still my fiancé. Sophia sat down across the table, glanced around, and asked with a frown, "Where's the seafood porridge?" "It's still in the pot." After saying that, I took a look at my beef noodles. Sophia frowned even more and said with disdain, "Look at you, you're so fat, and you still eat such greasy food. Can you learn from David? If your appearance is not good enough, at least you should have a good figure. Otherwise, it will be embarrassing to take you out. Sophia has very high requirements for my figure. In the 5 years we have been together, in order to satisfy her, I have boiled vegetables and meat for almost every meal. So, during the physical examination some time ago, I was diagnosed with malnutrition. The doctor looked at me with confusion, probably because he didn't understand how I could be malnourished when I was dressed so beautifully. When I finished the last bite of noodles, Sophia's patience was running out. She knocked on the table irritably and urged, "Hurry up, pack the porridge in the insulated lunchbox. David is still waiting at home." I looked across at the woman I had loved for many years and said calmly, "Didn't you see the news about the divorce yesterday? Sophia paused, as if she just remembered this, and said disdainfully, I saw it. What's the matter? You don't want to let me go? Every time you break up, you end up crying and begging me. I won't bother with you this time. Hurry up and give me the porridge, otherwise I won't be so patient. I pushed the chair away, stood up, and said to her calmly, Sophia, I'm serious. Let's get a divorce. Sophia was stunned for a moment, then stood up and looked at me with a half smile and said proudly, James, you were so tough after a wedding. I just left in the middle of sex, so you can't stand it? Why didn't you act so tough before? I put on my coat and stood at the door, saying to her expressionlessly, Let's go. I've asked for today's day off. Sophia said angrily, Okay, whoever doesn't leave will be the grandson. The marriage ended in failure. David called Sophia away at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I no longer care about the reason. It was not the first time. David had called Sophia away at the right time many times before. I wondered if the wedding night would have the same result. Who knew it would come true? When I imagined it, I thought I would be very angry, unable to keep calm, and even violent. But when it really happened, I was calm and felt like it was true. Since we can't get a divorce, let's not waste today's holiday. I went to a law firm and asked a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. Sophia and I don't have much marital property, so we don't have to worry about the division of property. After getting the divorce agreement, I call my childhood friend Mark to arrange a meal. When we met, Mark teased me and said, on the second day of the wedding, Are you willing to separate from your Sophia? I scratched my hair and said bitterly, I'm planning on getting a divorce. Mark was stunned for a few seconds, then said unexpectedly, Congratulations. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, James, pour out the water in your brain. Sophia is a woman who is not content at first glance. I saw her hugging and kissing men many times in the bar, but you are so deeply involved, I can't tell you. I can see the expression of Mark, who wanted to say something but hesitated after he mentioned Sophia many times before. It is true that a bystander can see more clearly. Stop talking and have a few drinks with me. After I said that, I tilted my head back and poured all the wine in the glass down my throat. 00 in the evening, when I got home after eating and drinking, I opened the door and saw Sophia wearing a black suspender dress, sitting in the living room and chatting with someone via video. When she saw me coming in, Sophia slowly hung up the video. From my angle, her clothes were no different from revealing her breasts. I didn't care and walked past her to take a shower. When I was about to finish my shower, a soft body came up to me. Sophia blew into my ear and said ambiguously, Honey, I'll make up for your wedding night. If Sophia had been so proactive before, I would have been excited all night, but now my heart is purer than God. I broke away from her, put on my clothes neatly, turned around and looked at her God calmly. Sophia, stay away from me. Sophia was stunned for a moment, then pointed at me and yelled in frustration. Stay away from you. Who do you think you are? I took the initiative to make peace with you. What else do you want? Do you think I really want to touch you? If David hadn't persuaded me to make peace with you, I wouldn't have gone home today. I raised a sarcastic smile and said coldly, You can leave now. Pack up your things and go to your first love's house. Don't get in my way. Sophia suddenly looked as if she had suddenly realized something and said contemptuously, Besides being jealous of David, what else can you do? You really want to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with me? If I had known, I should have gone with you to go through the divorce procedures in the morning and then waited for you to beg me. I gave you a way out just now, but you didn't give up. Then go and sleep in the guest bedroom. After saying that, Sophia put on her bathrobe and looked down at me. I know that Sophia is waiting for me to ask for her forgiveness. In the past, every time we quarreled, I would do everything I could to make peace, even kneeling down to beg her a few times. Over time, Sophia got used to it, and every time we quarreled or had a cold war, I would give in. This time I just picked up the pillow and quilt, closed the door of the guest bedroom, and ignored Sophia's surprised expression behind me. When I woke up the next day, I saw Sophia cooking breakfast for the first time. Honey, are you awake? It's time for breakfast. Seeing me come out, she brought a pot of seafood porridge and placed it on the dining table. then raised her hand to call me over. I looked at Sophia in surprise. It was hard not to suspect that the seafood porridge was poisoned. Sophia was a good cook, but this was the first time she cooked for me. When I first knew that Sophia could cook, I begged her to cook for me. She impatiently shook my hand away and said, "Are you looking for a girlfriend or a nanny? If you insist on me cooking, we'll break up." As soon as the word breakup came out, I stopped. At that time, I thought that my request reminded Sophia of some bad memories, so I apologized to her repeatedly and never mentioned asking her to cook again. But I learned from David's circle of friends that Sophia learned cooking skills specifically for him. When they were together, she was the one who cooked. So the contrast between love and hate was very obvious at that moment. I took a deep look at the seafood porridge and said softly, "Thank you, but I don't want to eat it." Sophia's face turned extremely ugly when she heard that. She put the dishes and chopsticks in her hands on the table with a clang and said angrily, "James, what do you mean now? You shamelessly begged me to cook for you before, and now that I'm doing it, you're giving me a cold shoulder again? It's just the wedding night, isn't it? Is such a small matter worth you being so fussy about? You've always been like this before." Yes, I loved her before, so I tolerated her many times, but in return, I only got slander and hurt again and again. I looked at her coldly. "Sophia, I am allergic to seafood." A trace of embarrassment flashed across Sophia's face, but she still stiffened her neck and said, "I don't know. You didn't tell me." I smiled sadly and mockingly. 5 years, Sophia. We have been together for 5 years. You even remember clearly that David doesn't eat onions, but you don't know that I am allergic to seafood. Is it because I didn't tell you, or you just don't care? Maybe my words touched Sophia's sore spot. She immediately jumped up and accused me, shouting loudly, "Don't you know that you are allergic to seafood? Is it necessary to make such a big deal? If you don't eat it, there are many people who do." I nodded indifferently and said, "Then give it to others." After that, I went out to work. After arriving at the company, I saw David's WeChat Moments update. Sophia's seafood porridge is amazing. Some people really don't know how lucky they are. The accompanying picture was a photo of Sophia filling his porridge. I silently gave him a thumbs up and started working at my desk. During lunch break, Mark came to me and said he had a big project to discuss with me. He came to me with a new energy project plan, and when he talked about his studio, the light in his eyes was hard to look at. At the end of his speech, he patted me on the shoulder and persuaded me, "James, with my research results and your ability, we will definitely succeed." After listening to what he said, I agreed without hesitation because the drive in him was something I had lost for a long time. In the 5 years I've been with Sophia, I almost forgot what I was like before. After being with Sophia, I quit my previous job as sales director and chose to work for a small company, working from 9 to 5 every day. Friends said I had changed, but I said nonchalantly, "This is a sacrifice for love. You single guys don't understand." The louder I said it at the time, the more painful it is now. That afternoon, I submitted my resignation application to the company. At the end of the month, my boss notified me that I could stop coming to work next week after handing over my work. "Before leaving, get off work, come back early in the evening, let's talk about divorce." 00, but no one came back, but I saw David updated his circle of friends again. On my 18th birthday, I made a wish to watch my idol's concert with the one I love, and it came true on my 26th birthday. The picture was a photo of him and Sophia wearing couple outfits and going to a concert with their faces close together. My patience with them completely evaporated after seeing this post. I commented on David's post, "No need to make any more wishes. Let Sophia come back and get a divorce. You can live your life however you like." Less than 10 minutes after I posted the comment, Sophia called me. After I answered the call, Sophia yelled at me, "James, that's enough. Today is David's birthday. Are you trying to discuss me on purpose? You're fussing over such a small matter. I was blind to marry you." I chuckled, not caring what she said, and said calmly, "Sophia, if you keep dragging your feet like this, I'll think you're reluctant to divorce me." She was choked by me and responded angrily, "See you in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Whoever doesn't come is a grandson." After that, I hung up the phone. A dreamless night. The next morning, I took another half day off. When my boss asked me why I wanted to leave, I confessed, I'm taking leave to get a divorce. He remained silent. I waited at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau for more than an hour, but Sophia didn't show up. When I was about to call her, I received a message from her with a picture of a plane ticket. Sophia said that the company had arranged for her to go on a business trip temporarily, and she would talk about the divorce when she came back. Everyone had left, and I had no choice but to take this opportunity to visit Mark's studio and see where I would be working in the future. When Mark saw me, he took me to an empty office, looked at me proudly, and said, "James, this is the office prepared for you. Although our office is small, it has everything we need. Now we owe you a helping hand. Looking at the working atmosphere here, I am already looking forward to it." Mark took out the plan and said excitedly, "Since you are here, let's talk about the next plan." In this way, he dragged me to brainstorm for the whole morning. Although I was very tired, I felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. For the next 2 days, I rushed to Mark's studio after I got off work, and my days were much more fulfilling than before. Friday was my last day at the company. After I got off work, I went to dinner with a few of my good colleagues. After dinner, I said I wanted to go to the bathroom. On the way back, I passed a private room and heard a familiar voice coming from inside. "Sophia, don't you hate James? Why don't you agree to divorce him?" Sophia laughed sarcastically and continued, "I don't like him. If his father hadn't used his retirement money as a betrothal gift, I wouldn't have gotten married to him. I'm only with him because I'm angry with David." Her friend couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, "How much dowry did his father give you?" Through the crack in the door, I saw Sophia holding up 5 fingers. Her friend was stunned for a moment, then exclaimed, $500,000? Sophia nodded proudly and said, "Yeah, David just happened to be starting a company, right? I plan to invest the $500,000 in him. Haha, other people are selling their daughters, but his family is paying to sell their sons." Sophia laughed so hard she couldn't straighten her back when she heard this. And now I feel like a long, dormant volcano that suddenly erupts. No wonder the last time I went back to my parents' house, they kept asking about our relationship. While I was angry, I also felt guilty towards my parents. Sophia and I met through a blind date. When we first met, she was wearing a white dress, and the bright smile on her face was deeply engraved in my heart. After that day, I asked her out for dinner and movies every now and then, and she agreed every time. But her attitude towards me was always lukewarm. After knowing each other for 3 months, Sophia suddenly asked me if I liked her and if I wanted to be her boyfriend. I was surprised, but I agreed the next second. We were together for 4 years, and I proposed to Sophia more than 20 times. She told me every time that it was too early. When I had convinced myself that 2 people didn't have to get married, she proposed to me and got the marriage certificate the next day. I thought Sophia had come to her senses, but she was bribed by money. I left the restaurant as if nothing had happened. When I got home, I contacted a lawyer to inquire about the betrothal gift. The lawyer's answer was if that there was evidence, he could make her leave the house with nothing. After hanging up the phone, I immediately asked someone I knew to introduce me to a private detective. The next morning, I went back to my parents' house. After asked them many times, they finally told me about it. It turned out that Sophia had just casually asked for it, and when she saw that my parents really took out $500,000, she was attracted by the money and agreed to marry me. I looked at the white hair on my parents' temples and felt indescribable sadness in my heart. After that, in order not to alert others, I did not mention divorce to Sophia again. Sophia came home on the 5th day after her business trip. By then, I had packed some clothes and moved to Mark's house. In order to test my opinion, Sophia sent me messages every day, asking me when I would be home. While I was answering her perfunctorily, I was looking at the evidence sent to me by the detective. Looking at the photos and hotel check-in records, I felt as if a bucket of cold water was poured on my heart. It turned out that Sophia and David have always been entangled. Every time Sophia worked overtime, she was almost always in a hotel with David. The business trip she mentioned a few days ago was just to stay at David's house for a few days, so as not to file for divorce with me. They didn't know that I didn't know about the betrothal gift, so they kept delaying. I sent all the evidence to the lawyer and asked him to deal with it. I just turned a blind eye, but Sophia just wouldn't let me go. My phone pushed an app message saying that the surveillance camera at home had detected a suspicious person coming in and out. I clicked on the video and, to my surprise, the two of them had already started having sex in the living room. I will not want this house anymore. I notified my lawyer and filed for divorce directly. The evidence is enough to make her leave the house with nothing. The day Sophia received the lawsuit, she called me in a rage and yelled, "James, you want me to leave the house for such a small matter? You are too optimistic, aren't you? I didn't expect you to be such a person who only cares about money. I really misjudged you." After she finished speaking, I calmly responded, "According to the civil code, the cheating party must leave the house with nothing." "What do you mean by cheating?" There was a hint of panic in Sophia's voice. I sneered and continued, "In your eyes, am I a fool? You hid it from me for 5 years. Let's meet in court." I hung up the phone, stretched, and continued to work. At this time, the lawyer sent me a message saying that there was something important and asked me to go to the law firm for an interview. I was puzzled, but I rushed to the law firm immediately. "Mr. James, you need to watch this video." As soon as I sat down, the lawyer projected the surveillance video of our home that day onto the screen. I was just about to ask, "What's there to watch? Isn't it just a couple having sex?" The lawyer quickly scrolled the video to the last 5 minutes. In the video, Sophia and David were sitting there leaning against each other. After David finished smoking a cigarette, he hugged Sophia and asked, "James, you don't know that the people you are meeting are not your parents, right?" Sophia sneered and said disdainfully, "That idiot must not know how he can meet my parents whenever he wants. Look, he hasn't mentioned divorce to me recently. I guess he regretted it. I'll give him some sweet treats in a few days, and he'll come back like a dog." David touched the top of Sophia's head lovingly and said with a distressed tone, "Sophia, I'm sorry for wronging you. When my company is established, I will treat you well." Sophia looked at David with a touching expression and said lovingly, "Everything is worth it for you." The video ends here. I took a few deep breaths to calm down. I asked the lawyer if their behavior was illegal. The lawyer said no, but she could return the betrothal gifts in full and ask for additional compensation. I felt better. I thought Sophia was just cheating, but I didn't expect that I was actually part of their plan. Soon the day of the trial arrived. Before the trial, Sophia pretended to be pitiful and begged me to forgive her. But after the trial, when I presented the evidence one by one, her face became more and more ugly. Until my lawyer finally handed over the video, Sophia's face was completely pale. Since we had complete evidence, the judge quickly ruled that we should divorce on the spot, and the woman had to return the betrothal gift in full and compensate the man for mental damages of $50,000. After coming out of the court, Sophia rushed over to me like crazy and yelled at me, "James, you have such a vicious heart. You actually installed surveillance cameras at home." I sneered and said with disdain, "Sophia, why don't you say that what you did is disgusting? You should be thankful that what you did has not reached the point of sentencing. Otherwise, I would definitely send you to jail." Sophia told me that she still couldn't understand why I suddenly changed. I smiled and said, "Because I figured it out. It's a waste to use my true feelings on you." I turned around and walked a few steps. Then I remembered that she was still living in my house. I turned back and said to her, "Sophia, I'll give you 3 days to move out of my house. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." After the divorce, I planned to sell the house and go back home to live with my parents. With a bang, the moment I pushed open the studio door, several salutes suddenly rang out. "Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations to Director James for escaping from misery." It was Mark and a group of colleagues who greeted me at the door. I waved my hand and said excitedly, "To celebrate my singleness, let's have a dinner tonight. I'll treat you." My colleagues, all of whom were of the same age, were happily making some strange noises. I know what Mark meant. After all, I have loved Sophia for so many years. I may not be able to accept a sudden divorce. But when the judge's hammer came down, I felt relieved, without a trace of sadness or reluctance. Maybe my love for her has been exhausted by her repeated hurts. What I didn't expect was that Sophia would show up at my studio the next day. She was wearing the same white dress she wore when we first met, and she was standing at the door of the studio waiting for me. "What are you doing here?" Sophia looked at me with red eyes and said, "James, are you really going to be so cruel to me? Are you going to kick me out?" I just remembered that after my divorce yesterday, the real estate agent brought people to my house to look at. The house was newly renovated and in a good location. Most importantly, in order to sell it, I lowered the price by 10% and gave it all furniture. I looked at her coldly and asked, "Is it useful for you to play the emotional card at this time? Or does David have no house for you to live in? By the way, it seems that you still pay for the rent of this house?" After the detective investigated Sophia before, I learned that David was a gigolo. He earned $2,000 a month, but his food, housing, and other necessities were quite good. Sophia would give him money every month to help him pay the rent. Sophia's salary was not enough for the two of them, so at that time, she would ask me for money every month with various excuses. At first, she would come up with some reasons, but after a long time, every time Sophia asked me for money, she would say, "James, transfer me $20,000. Sophia was deeply hurt by my words, and her face turned ugly. But for the sake of money, she still endured it and said aggrievedly, "James, I know you are just angry with me. You can't bear to be so cruel to me, right? That house is full of our memories. You can't sell it." Looking at her hypocritical face, I said impatiently, "Sophia, stop disgusting me. If you don't leave, I will ask someone to recover the money you spent on David during your marriage." Hearing this, Sophia glared at me fiercely and said fiercely, "James, things may change over time. When David succeeds, you will have to bear the consequences yourself." After saying that, she twisted and left. In order to avoid Sophia, I asked Mark if there was any project that required a business trip, the farther the better. When the guy heard that I took the initiative to ask for a business trip, he immediately arranged a visa for me and booked a flight to Argentina. I was stunned. This was beyond my acceptance, but I had already fallen into the trap, so I had to bite the bullet and go ahead. The day after my visa was approved, I flew to Argentina. The work in Argentina progressed faster than I expected. I signed the contract before the return trip. Thinking of the bad things in China, I decided to give myself a vacation. It is summer in this country 9,000 kilometers away from the United States. I felt the enthusiasm of Buenos Aires, saw the majesty of the Andes Mountains, appreciated the magnificence of the Iguazu Falls, and tasted the world-famous red wine and steak. On my last day in Argentina, Mark called me to tell me about what happened in China before you left. "The moving company you hired was amazing. Sophia refused to leave, so they packed up and threw her out. That woman came to the studio to look for you every day. I get annoyed when I see her. I heard she even went to your parents' house to show her affection." Before I heard the last sentence, I wanted to continue my business trip to another place, but after hearing her harassing my parents, I finally decided to go back and deal with the matter. The day after I returned home, Sophia rushed over upon hearing the news. The moment she saw me, she reached out and held my hand. Tears seemed to fall in the next second. I raised my eyebrows. "Is Sophia planning to take a conciliatory approach?" Sophia pleaded with red eyes, "James, I regret it. Let's get remarried. I don't believe you will let me go so soon. I swear to you, I will never meet David again, and I will love you wholeheartedly. You're still living in your adulterous house, and you told me you won't meet him anymore?" Sophia was delighted when she heard this, thinking that I was jealous of David, and that was why I quarreled with him like this. "James, you forced me to do this. You had me kicked out, and I had nowhere to go, so I had to live in his house. If you're not happy, take me back. But I don't want to live in that house anymore. As compensation, you have to buy me a bigger house than that one, otherwise, Humph, I will not forgive you." I heard that Humphand couldn't help vomiting. Sophia finally understood what I meant by that. She raised her hand in frustration and wanted to slap me, but I dodged. I said coolly, "Sophia, you have so much time to pretend here. Why don't you think about what to do about David's company's losses? By the way, your $500,000 betrothal gift has been delayed for so long. It's time to return it. Sophia was so angry that her face turned red. She threatened me viciously, "Don't force me, or you will regret it." I chuckled and walked away without noticing the vicious expression on Sophia's face. After that meeting, Sophia never showed up again. This morning, as soon as I got to work, my assistant came running to me in a hurry and said, "Director James is in trouble." I looked at her in confusion, and the assistant sent me a link and asked me to open it. After clicking it, I saw Sophia's photo. And the link title was, "My vicious ex-husband abused me." After I filed for divorce, he blackmailed me again and again. The link roughly said that I had abused her many times during our marriage, and after she filed for divorce, I robbed her house and extorted money from her. Domestic violence has always been a sensitive topic, so this post quickly caused a sensation on the internet, and even my personal information was already available online. When I saw the pictures circulating online, I knew what was going on. I immediately called the police and hired a lawyer to collect evidence and sue them later. After thinking for a moment, I registered an account and posted online the evidence of Sophia's infidelity that I had collected before, the court verdict at the time, and the police report receipt. This incident was already a hot topic, so it quickly became a hot search. Netizens realized that they were being played for fun, and they all rushed to Sophia's account to criticize her. This woman is so shameless. She cheated on her husband and still blames others. Her ex-husband is so pitiful. They were together for 5 years, and he was cheated on for 5 years. Although her behavior did not reach the level of marriage fraud, it was much more terrible than marriage fraud. There were as many people who helped her as there were netizens who scolded her now, or even more. 2 days later, Sophia appeared at the door of the studio, wrapped tightly. I looked at her coldly and asked impatiently, "What are you doing here again?" Sophia held my hand tightly and begged, "James, please help me. I didn't want to do what I did online. David forced me to do it. I understand now. You are the one I love. Let's get back together. We can have 2 babies and we will be very happy. James, you can't watch me die. You can't force me to death." I laughed sarcastically and continued, "What you said is strange. How could I force you to death? Did I force you to cheat on me? When you took money from my parents, did I force you to do it? All of this was caused by you wanting it all." Sophia broke down and cried, "No, you love me. You won't stop loving me. James, you love me the most." I sneered and then said, "I, who loved you, have been killed by your own hands. Sophia, there is no possibility for us to be together in the future. Please don't harass me or my family anymore." After that, I asked the studio's newly hired security guard to take her away and not let her in again. After that day, Sophia changed her strategy and waited for me at the door of the studio every day with the meal she cooked. My colleagues in the company were betting on how long she could last. When someone asked me to guess how long it would last, I smiled and didn't comment. Recently, the studio has been involved in a big project, and I have been working overtime until very late every day. After work this day, I walked to the parking lot as usual. Within 2 minutes, a dark figure jumped out from the side and rushed towards me with a knife. When I was thinking about where I should kick him when he rushed over, a dark shadow suddenly appeared behind me. Looking at Sophia in front of me, a hint of surprise flashed in my eyes. Puff! The knife in the shadow's hand stabbed into Sophia's abdomen. Looking at Sophia lying on the ground, I hurriedly called the emergency number. When I accompanied Sophia to the hospital, I felt for the first time that I couldn't see through Sophia. Did she really regret it? Was she willing to protect me with her life? When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor congratulated me after the examination and said that Sophia was 1 month pregnant and that, thanks to good luck, both the adult and the child were fine. I looked at the 1-week pregnancy diagnosis sheet and was pretty sure that the baby wasn't mine. When I walked to the door of the ward with my pregnancy certificate in medicine, I heard Sophia talking on the phone with a tone of pride that she couldn't hide. Just now, the way James looked at me changed. "David, you are still smart. It doesn't matter if you use a self-torture trick as long as it can help you. But are you sure that the gangster won't tell the truth? That's fine. James will be back soon. So let's do this for now." Even if I only heard one side statement, It was not difficult to guess the truth of the matter. The slight sympathy that had just appeared disappeared immediately. When Sophia saw me come in, she immediately grabbed my hand and looked me up and down, then said thankfully, "Fortunately, you're okay. Otherwise, I would be heartbroken." If I hadn't heard what she said just now, I would have been fooled by her. After I put my things away, she suddenly asked, "Are you pregnant?" Sophia was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Whose child is it?" I shrugged, spread my hands, and said, "It won't be mine anyway." Sophia looked at the diagnosis sheet. A trace of struggle flashed across her face, and finally she took my hand and cried, "James, I don't know. I can abort the baby for you." I laughed sarcastically. "For the sake of money, you don't want the child with David. Have you discussed this with him?" "Sophia, it's fun to lie to me again and again, isn't it? I thought you had changed your personality." But in the end, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Sophia shook her head instinctively and said, "James, what did you say?" "I heard you make a phone call just now that I interrupted directly. You guys used this self-torture trick really well, but it's a pity that you are too proud too soon." Sophia started to play the sympathy card with me and said in a trembling voice, "I only do this because I love you. You have to understand my heart." I pulled my hand back and said coldly and firmly, "Sophia, there is no possibility for us." After saying this, I left without looking back and ignoring the crying behind me. After that separation, it was already a month later that I heard from Sophia again. That day, the assistant gossiped to me, "Director James, Sophia cut David's bottom with scissors after she found out that David was being kept by a rich woman." I nodded calmly and responded, "Have you finished writing the plan yesterday?" The assistant looked sad and said aggrievely, "You are the evil capitalist." I'm not surprised at all that this happened. How can two people who abandoned their moral bottom line again and again for money be rational? But their affairs have nothing to do with me now. Now I eat well, sleep well, make money quickly, and my friends and parents are around me. Love doesn't seem that important anymore.